Welcome to the Becoming Your Best Version podcast. I am your host, Maria Leonard Olson, and in this podcast, I interview amazing women whose paths have crossed mine and who have inspired me and who I think will inspire you. You can learn more about me at marialeonardolson.com. Please like, review this podcast and subscribe. And like my TEDx talk, you can find it all on my podcast, on my website link. So today we have Ching's son Stubis, who was born in the rubble of a Shanghai shantytown during the Great Chinese Famine, which killed 50 million people. She was left alone in her crude bamboo crib for 2 years while her parents worked to scrape together a few coins each day for their daily handful of rice. Growing up, she and her sisters were at first ignored by the rest of the family for being worthless girls, and later shunned as political pariahs when their honest father was imprisoned for speaking out against the injustice he saw around them. Despite extreme poverty, Ching pulled herself up by reading forbidden books and winning admission to one of China's most prestigious universities, graduating with a degree in English and English literature. With the help of a U.S. senator, she emigrated to the United States to further her studies and has sought through her writing to build greater understanding between Eastern and Western cultures and underscore our common hopes, dreams, and struggles. Ching is a writer, newspaper columnist, and author of the award-winning book called Once Our Lives, the true story of 4 generations of Chinese women who struggled to survive war, revolution, and the seemingly unshakable power of an ancient Chinese superstition. The book, which has been named a best read by Ms. Magazine, Glamour Magazine UK, Grand Magazine, and Reader's Favorite, and won the Nellie Bly Award for Journalistic Nonfiction, takes the reader on an exotic journey filled with real stories of luxurious banquets, lost jewels, babies sold in opium dens, kidnappings by pirates, and political persecution, seen through the eyes of a man for whom the truth would spell disaster, and a lonely, beautiful girl with 3 identities. For the past 17 years, she has been a newspaper columnist exploring the rich legacy of Asian culture and the common links we all share. She has just completed a novel and also writes poems, essays, short stories, and original Chinese tall tales inspired by traditional Asian themes. Ching has published more than 200 works in such media as the New York Times, USA Today, and more. She speaks to audiences around the world about writing and the need to strengthen the bonds of understanding and humanity that connect us all. You can find out more about her book, Once Our Lives, at www.quissunstubis.com and follow her on her social media. All of this is in the show notes. Welcome, Ching.
Thank you, Maria. I am really, really delighted to be on your show because I've seen so many, inspirational women and that you have interviewed and many you call your friends or mentors. So I feel very privileged.
Oh, thank you. Wow, you have really survived more than most people have. How did you come to being where you are today as a successful writer after such a difficult start?
That was a very long journey. In some ways, I felt that I have propelled my way forward most of my life and never tried to look back because I felt that I was a mountain climber, that the only way to get to the summit is not to look back and how far I have gone through. The thing was, that going forward gives me more confidence, give me the past gives me the wisdom to help me to understand what is important in life and what is needed for me to succeed. But at some point, when I was in my mid to late 40s, it forced me to find a way to my past. Because when my parents passed away, and I felt the only way to be with them again was to go back in time and think about our past together. And only then did I realize how far I have really gone through in life. And in some ways I couldn't even believe my own life, because I felt as if I have lived many lives like a cat.
Yeah.
um it was hard, and but somehow, with a miracle, I managed to be where I am today. And I don't even know how. That English was really not my language. I lived in China for 29 years of my life, in Shanghai, China. So I spoke, my languages were Mandarin and Shanghai dialect, which were very, very different. But I guess lucky for me, I got into a university, because study, reading books were my only ways to feel proud of myself. I felt that I found my dignity in words. So I did very well in school, even though it was during 10 long years of Cultural Revolution, where food was scarce, worries were plenty, and my father was constantly being jailed. But somehow, when I was in school, I found my peace, I found my tranquility, and I found that I could live as a child every day for a few hours when I was in school. So when the college examination restarted in China, I was very, very lucky, 1978. And I got into one of the finest institutions in China for languages. And there I learned Shakespeare, Chaucer, Spencer, Milton, Charles Dickens, Robert Burns, Percy Shelley, anyone you can think of. And I really felt that I was in a different world. And I became quite a romantic person, because I just love those stories. And I guess I always thought that I loved literature, but I never thought I was going to become a writer. I guess myself just kept on changing and reinvented as I make my ways forward in life.
Yeah. Well, did your sisters succeed as well?
Well, we had four girls, as you have introduced me, and without having a boy in the family, the girls never had a position, even though, we, in the modern days, men and women supposed to be equal, but the cultural somehow is so deeply embedded. Thinking about China have 5,000 years of history, it's just a we did not produce a boy. And my father was the first son, first grandson. And somehow he's supposed to have a son. And his firstborn was supposed to be a son. But my older sister was born a girl. And then my mother kept on giving girls, and four of us all together. So we were never respected. Just like me, all my sisters took our pride and all in education. I think also my mother had a big impact on us. She just loved to be in school, but she was never in school formally educated. Not that the family didn't have money, but my grandfather believed the girls shouldn't have a voice, shouldn't be sitting among the strangers, shouldn't talk out, shouldn't be known. So my grandfather educated my mother himself. when he was the general manager of a watch and clock shop right in the center of the old British section of Shanghai. And the shop that he was a general manager for was called a Wellington. So that kind of give you an idea how westernized they were. And her mother lived across the street in the old British Quarter as well. The rent, as I understood, was paid with gold. And so he was known. My mother told me, so my grandfather was a fancy dresser. He had a stick with silver wrapped around it, and he wore suits, and he had gold rimmed glasses, and he would walk across the street to his shop every day. And when my mother was a school aged girl, my mother would go across the street where he would teach her arithmetic and also writing. And when she did well, she was rewarded with gold watches. When he imported gold watches from Switzerland. So, she had, in a way, to the Chinese at the time, an upper class, at least a high middle class life. But being a girl was always hard on her, and then having four daughters never really gained her any social position in my father's family. So she taught us to study. She was our teacher when we were very little. And I remember my older sister was going to go to school. So my mother, she started to teach her. And we each got a little notebook and a pencil. And she would give us very tiny stools to sit on. And our desk were the little chairs and normal size stool. That was our desk. And I hated it because I was barely 4 years old. And I did not want to write. I wanted to play. So I would just drop my pencils all the time. I got really bored. And I thought I could never be a student. But then when my sister went to school and came back with 100 on her tests, and my mother would give her extra candies and give her affectionate hug or say, "Oh, it's so great," and just saw the smile on her face kind of motivated me. And I just said to myself, even as such a little child, when I go to school, I wanted to get 100. I wanted my mother to be proud of me. So that went far. That took me all the way through high school to the college in China, and all the way with 2 suitcases to come to the United States, to the University of Arizona in Tucson, study communications.
Did your sisters come to the US also?
Actually, one went to New Zealand. One stayed in China. To this day, she doesn't speak English. She raised a family, but she was a bus ticket conductor. And when she was off from her work, she attended night classes because she was determined to get her bachelor's degree like her other sisters. When she graduated from high school, she was 2 years older than me. The college entrance examination did not start. So she didn't have a chance of going to college like the way that I did. When she was in high school, the Chinese college system was based on merit. Like if you are born 4 generations of red blood, which means you have your father, your grandfather, your great grandfather, everybody were like farmers or workers, and they were dirt poor. If you could prove that, or military army soldiers, then their company would recommend you to colleges. So she never had a chance. She really studied hard, and she got her diploma for Chinese literature from the Institute of Pedagogy in Shanghai. So in that regards, four of us all have bachelor's degree, and three of us have master's degrees, And one of us has double master's degrees as well. So,
Wow. Well, your book, Once Our Lives, has received lots of attention and awards. Why do you think has been so successful? What is the message of that book?
well, my book, Once Our Lives, is a very unique book in a sense that the book literally puts you into the shoes of the people who lived through 100 years of Chinese history. And these are the real people, real ordinary people who lived extraordinary lives in very, very critical historical moments in China. And my motivation of the book, first, when I started, I was not a writer before, but I record my life, my parents and their parents' lives, and I felt they were so unique. Imagine my mother was kidnapped by pirates, and they had to drink porridges using the seawater because the boat was kept away, hide in a hiding place, and how horribly she got sick, how her cousin got kidnapped and was refused to be taken, given back to the family when the boat was finally released because she was so pretty. How my mother told me her aunt put ashes all over her face to escape the attention of those pirates, and all the excitement. And I really felt, and my father, how he lived through two terms of 7 years of imprisonment, and once during the Cultural Revolution for being against the Cultural Revolution. And then when the revolution was over, he was sent to the prison for 7 years again for being for the Cultural Revolution. And it actually happened. So our lives were a lot more complicated than most of the Chinese people's lives. I know everybody had their share of being hungry, going through starvations and worries. But my family went just through double, triple of what everyone else was having. So in that regards, I really wanted people. I was inspired by Frank McCourt, who wrote Angela's Ashes.
Mm, I love
And I felt when I was reading his book, I felt that I was living in Ireland. And through his eyes, I could feel like a little boy in Ireland. And I was determined to write like he wrote. There was a lot of inspiration from him. And I felt that I had great stories, the great lives that I lived through. And then my ancestors, because my mother was an actress, so she had a great memory and she told me fantastical but true stories of family's rich past. And I felt that I had all the material once I could pick up the pen. I really feel there was a movie projector reeling in front of me how to use English words to put these pictures onto the paper. And so the people could read about them like that. That was quite a challenge because,
Yeah.
as I said, English was not my original language. When I came to America, I could recite the Gettysburg Address. I could recite Shakespeare's sonnets, Robert Burns' poems, Longfellow's, Wordsworth, but actually writing it was very, very different.
Yes.
And I could not even, it's like people will laugh. I discovered at the time I couldn't think and type at the same time. That was very, very strange. And to this day, I could not remember numbers. If you tell me numbers in English, I literally have to translate them into Chinese. And that's how I store numbers because I never took any math classes in America. And I felt better when I learned Madame Curie actually had a problem. She could only calculate in Polish the
Ah.
numbers. So that made me feel much better because she is my idol, along with Abraham Lincoln. One man, one woman. You know, my husband is behind Abraham Lincoln, but I think he feels good that I actually put him as high a standard up there. But yeah, he is a good deed doer American. Always try to do good things. He worked for United Negro College Fund and worked with the Bill Gray III, the whip majority at the time, and tried to help to promote all the African American colleges. And then he worked for 17 years for a children's organization, all not for profit, to help abused and neglected children to regain their confidence in life and try to give them their lives back. And then he worked for American Humane Society to help all the animals, and whether the shelter animals or the military dogs were left overseas, or the farm animals. So we are good deed doers, and I felt I'm a romantic person. I was romantically in love with him, even though when I first came here, I thought, maybe I could marry a powerful man who could help me, but I ended up just being who I am, ultra romantic. And we build a life together, we build a family together. And he is my biggest supporter for my book, Once Our Lives, because when I got discouraged, when I felt there were moments that I would never be able to publish the book or could never keep on writing it because lack of time or anything, I felt that I always had a support, a strong pillar behind me, whether to give me a bubble bath with candlelight. So, and he would play piano downstairs because he was a classical trained pianist from Juilliard, just so that I could relax myself, or lit a candle and just sit together and ask me to read what I have written. And then he would question me in some ways, kind of clear the threads in my head, and how to go forward. So I feel very lucky, but it was definitely not an easy journey by any stretch of imagination. It took me nearly 20 years
Wow.
when I first started until I finished it. Through that journey, I became a newspaper columnist. I became a poet. I kept on reinventing myself, finding a bigger me through the process, because I realized that all the writings, it's like you be a seamstress. You cannot just sew a dress, you can certainly sew everything else. And I found, interestingly, when you write a newspaper column, it's like writing an essay. It's just much, actually, writing an essay in some ways very hard because you want to make sure you're complete with a beginning, with an end. It's like being a little sparrow versus a much bigger animal. You need to have everything complete inside it. And then I enjoy writing short stories and poems. Sometimes when I write a short poem, I feel like I'm doing a sketch work, and I'm thinking about how to really describe a moment of emotion, or little flower or plant or little object. Once I wrote about a fire hydrant, just because I was passing by a fire hydrant, which looked very comical and unique because it was half buried underground, and half of it was above, like its head was poking out. So I really felt that I projected myself being a fire hydrant, how I felt in that position. So it had been a great experience and journey. And when by the time I had my book published, it was quite a sense of accomplishment and relief and pride. And my husband and I took a book tour up and down from Canada all the way to Florida, and from the West Coast, Barnes and Nobles at a Grove in Los Angeles, all the way to New York City. And of course, being in DC, Politics and Prose, where I had my book opening. And just most recently, I gave a book talk at JF Books, which is right next to the Kramer Books. And I had a full house where I had very, very interesting people who came and attended. Among them, one woman, and we found out she was the granddaughter of what do you call W.C. Fields.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
his granddaughter came and attended, and she invited us to go to New York, and she's writing a play. And I signed a book to one of the family members of the Tolstoy family,
Wow.
a
Did your
concept.
sisters read the book?
Very unfortunately, one is not here anymore, so she will not be able to read it. One is in New Zealand, and I wish she could. And my older sister, who doesn't speak English, but she encourages me when I needed to consult someone about a past event. She was the one that I would go to. We
Mm.
would talk for hours about her memory, what my mother's story was like, versus my memory of my mother's story is like. And we discovered quite a bit of new things. A lot of them actually are not in the book, because in the book is unique. You cannot put everything in a book. Book is something, has a shape, has a mission, has a line of stories. But I have learned so much more. I have also learned why my grandmother hated me when I was a child, why I hated her because I never got any attention and except criticism and not good stuff. So, and then through the writing process, I learned a lot about my culture, about how the families functioned, about how brave my father was and what an honest man he was, and about my mother, who was brilliant, smart, could make anything out of nothing. So there was a lot that I learned.
You mentioned ancient Chinese superstition being a part of the book. In what way? How does that play a role in the book?
Well, my grandmother was a Buddhist. She believed in strange things. During the Cultural Revolution, we were taught through Mao's quotations, Karl Marx's words, and superstition was considered to be horrible, really, really bad, and we should not believe those things. But yet, my grandmother contradicted the government. She used to tell me a story that spooked me about my father's life. And she believed that my father had a fate, and that anything bad happened to him was because of that fate. So the superstition came. I started my book with the superstition, actually, was when she was pregnant with my father. And toward the end of the pregnancy, she had 7 days of visits by a beggar. Now, she was married to a nice, rich family, and there was no problem with the food and everything. But somehow she opened the door and there was a beggar. And instead of asking the servants to take care of the matter, she fed the beggar. She felt She was very sympathetic to him. In a sense, she was worried about her own life. She was 19, and most of the girls at that age giving birth to children could die because of complications, and there were no doctors in her fishing village. So she fed a beggar 7 days, and then the child was born, and the beggar never came back until one day she realized that the beggar was not a person. When she looked at my father's eyes, she felt there was a reflection of the beggar's eyes. She realized the beggar was a wandering spirit, and he was in search for a home to come back to life. And he decided my grandmother was very nice to him, and he came to that family. He would never be starving and never have to go out and beg for food. So my grandmother believed that the beggar's fate invaded her womb before my father was born. And I never believed it. My father never believed it. But when I look back into his life, when everything could go wrong, would it go wrong? And how toward even the very end of their lives, my father's life and my grandmother's life very much entwined together. So the beginning and the end of my book was about that incident of that wandering spirit. And if you
That's
read it, you will realize, you will say it, you will make the determination whether that wandering spirit was real, the superstition was real, or was it just my grandmother's perception.
That sounds really interesting. I look forward to reading that. So I ask all of my guests the following question. What do you do, Ching, to become your best version?
To keep my fear away, keep my fears in check. That is very important in my life. In a sense, I have a lot of fears. I don't know about listeners out there. I always worried whether the past would come back and haunt me, whether horrible things happened could be repeated, would a failure come back again and again. So I would have nightmares of my past to this day. So it's very, very important for me to have the best version of myself is every day to keep the fear in check. And I should not worry. I should be brave. I should, instead of using the energy and a time to worry about things, I use that time to do things. So for me, it's very important. And also, I think it's very important for us not to compare our best version, ourselves, with any other people, because everybody is different. Think about myself, my past, every step of the way. The best of me was very different. The best of me as a child was if I could have a full stomach, if I was not starving, if I could get 100 on my test, became the best of me, changed every step of the way. And now I feel the best of me is try to keep on building that bridge of humanity. Living in Bethesda is a wonderful thing. I have neighbors and people and friends from all over the world. And I just feel that my story is not just a particular family story. It's a story that everyone can share when you live through war, revolution, when you have obstacles in your life, when you want to challenge your life and to do better. It's We are all facing the same choices, what to do, how to be brave. And I feel my story can encourage the others to be better, to do better, to understand other people better. So I felt that I would always keep going. I will keep on writing about the culture, about the people, um, just to let others understand. The more you read about the others, the more you will get out of yourself. I think most of us over worry about ourselves. It's like centered about my life. The best version of ourselves is not centered around ourselves. To me, it's centered around how we can be a part of the world. We can be part of our society, a part of everybody. And when the world around us is better, then we are better. So I think that I found that I have a bigger mission. I do not worry and feel sad, feel sorry for myself. And besides, I felt that I had so much love. Once Our Lives is actually a very positive book. Just think about, Angela's Ashes. When people in a horrible situation, they do not really suffer the misery. They actually enjoying even, little bits and pieces of things they had. They actually enjoy their lives. There's a lot of love, and there's also a lot of challenges that we go through. So I think it's very important to keep on discover ourselves in new ways. Sometimes we discover ourselves in new ways through our past
Mhm.
or through the present of us. So I would say, yes, we definitely can achieve a better version of ourselves through excelling, through thinking about the others sometimes and not about ourselves. What can we do for the others? What can we do for the world? That's what I feel.
Agreed. Wow, that's a great answer. So I encourage you all to take a look at her website where you can read excerpts of her book, Once Our Lives, and follow her on social media. I look forward to your next book.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm in the process of doing it, and it will again be about the women. So it will be very interesting for the world to see how the minds of the people changes from one generation to another, from the city to the countryside. And as we also grow, that how we can evolve as well. And it's very much actually about the migrant population in China. So America is not the only country has a big migrant population. Here it's more like immigrant, legal, illegal. But in China, it is we have over a billion people, but there are a lot of people living in the countryside. When the world opens up, they realize that they want to have an adventure. So they move around the country, they migrate, and which is a great way of sending um, a breath of fresh air
Yeah.
from one place to another. And if we would accept ourselves, because you say, like, oh, Chinese people, they all look the same, they eat the same rice, but they are very, very different, actually. So I hope that my new book will give people perspective about even within a supposedly pretty, much a very anonymous, was a country that with the same type of people, with the black hair, with the yellow skin, but they are very, very different. So
Yes,
it
it
would be
sounds like a
interesting.
great book. I look forward to reading it. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much.